that were going on. So we very soon took the decision to establish a series of advisory groups on key issues. And those were ongoing. They had community members, they had elected councillors, and the relevant staff also attended those. We also took the decision not to have committees because I'm not speaking necessarily specifically about the Fremantle one, but our observations in other local governments was that very often you had the same discussion in both committee and council, and didn't necessarily add any value to either. So we set up, I think it was about half a dozen advisory groups. Most of those are still in existence in some form with some modifications. That has now morphed since my time at Vincent into a community engagement panel, which provides that community voice. It reflects the city's demographic profile, so it actively tries to bring in people who are not normally in the volunteering mode. Is constituted in a fair and transparent manner that will be heard and facilitated in an impartial manner, that will be appropriately supported during their process and their participation valued, and that Council will give serious consideration to recommendations of the panel. And moreover, both the Community Engagement Panel and the advisory groups provide minutes of their proceedings, so it becomes a contribution to the public debate as well. That is something that I'm missing in the 2.5 years that I've been living in Fremantle. There may be other ways of achieving the same objective, but I would love to see those objectives clearly enunciated and acted on by the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam, did you want to speak as the seconder? Oh, are there any other speakers on this motion? All right, so I'll put the motion to a vote, and simple majority again, show of hands. So all those in favour and against, and that's carried. And your next motion, Ian?
Okay, the second one is much shorter, you'll be pleased to hear. The motion is that Council provide more timely responses to questions raised by members of the public at public question time, whether at committee or council meetings, than the current practice of including such responses in the agenda for the subsequent meeting.
All right, do we have a seconder for that one? Mark Woodcock.
Thank you. As I said, I shall aim to be brief on this one. Questions are, by definition, calls for information, and often that information is required for purposes that may be time critical or may be contributing to other processes which have critical timelines as well. And if we have to wait 4 weeks for questions to be answered, the value of the answers themselves might well be reduced by the time that they're currently published, but that may also detract from other community-based processes that the information was sought for.
Thank you. The seconder, Mark Woodcock, did you wish to speak? Okay. Any other speakers? John Dowson.
As somebody who asks too many questions, my concern is getting good, straightforward, clear, accurate answers. So recently I asked questions at FPOL, and when the minutes came out, my answers were in the minutes, which I thought was remarkable. It was a very quick turnaround. However, I wasn't happy with the answers. So I think the question is, do the officers have enough time? You've got to give the officers enough time to get the information to respond, and hopefully the answers will be accurate. The good thing about having answers in agenda papers and minutes is that it is a record. So if the answers were simply sent to the person asking the question, then the rest of the community would not know the answer. So I still think it's very important to have answers on the public record in the agenda papers at whatever time that the officers can get them done by.
Thank you. If you want to come up to a microphone.
So just on that, it's also when, say for tonight, will all the questions be, this is probably part of a question that goes to the motion, is all the questions that were asked tonight, and if there were verbal answers given, will they appear in the minutes of this meeting?
I'm going to say yes. Yes,
Thank you.
that's what I understand. All right, any other speakers? We've opened up a good debate for timeliness versus detail. Further speakers? Nope. Okay, Ian, did you want to close?
I just want to clarify the very valid point made by John Dowson. The intention of the motion is not that the answers would not be in the next agenda or whenever they are available. So they would still be on the public record, but they would be made available to the questioner in a more timely fashion. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to put this one to the vote. All those in favour of this motion? And against? And that's carried. And your third and final, I believe, motion, Ian.
Okay, as you'll gather from my questions, I'm very concerned about process issues as a way of getting good governance at all levels, and I applied this when I was within state government departments as well.
All right, I've got it up on the screen, so just to cut to the chase, whether we can get a seconder and then you can speak to it. So is there a seconder?
The motion is that the City of Fremantle improve the accessibility of the administration over and above the current practice of providing only a single point of access for the whole administration by phone or email, with the standard email response being that your inquiry will be dealt with within 10 working days, which can result in unnecessary delays.
Okay. Seconder for this one? Yep, Maria Vusic.
Okay. The point here is that it's all too easy for requests for information, requests for actions to disappear into a black hole eventually. If you don't have a point of contact with the area of the administration that it deals with a particular issue that you are concerned with. So opportunities might include such simple things as provision of a general email address and phone contact number for each functional area of the city's administration, so that instead of going into a big pool of things, we can actually get it into a particular area of the administration, and we know exactly where we can follow up if the response is not forthcoming. I fully admit that when a response is forthcoming, there's very often a name or contact details attached to that, but this is before we get to that stage, and it can be quite unnerving not getting some sort of response.
All right, Maria Vusic, did you want to speak as a seconder? I wonder if I might get staff just to quickly address the current system, because my understanding is it's kind of a document management system where it gets tasked. I don't know if anyone wants to sort of speak to how we currently manage and why we do it that way, because it's a really legit question.
Look, there are a couple of ways of coming into the system. One is through the email process, I agree. That does get tasked through our record keeping system, so there is an acknowledgement of who that goes to. The second one is our customer request system, which you can dial in via our website, and that goes direct to an officer as well. And any reports on that are collected and put into the system so that anyone at the front counter, customer service, or any other officer can actually read what's going on. So they're the two ways of going through. The customer request system is the one that works the best, I would say.
Any further speakers on the item? Yep. All right, so did you wish to close? No. All right, so we'll put this one to a vote. All those in favour? Yep. And against? And completely neutral, quite a few. Not illegitimate, so that's carried. Yep. Okay, and Gina Blakemore, you've got our final motion for the night. You can just give us a summary and then we'll get a seconder for you.
Yeah. That the City of Fremantle reinstate the blue and red cat buses back to 10 minutes in September 2023.
All right, I'm going to ask you to speak a little bit louder in the microphone if you can from now on. A little bit quiet. Seconder for this one. Yep. I think Mark Woodcock seconded it. Carry on.
Good evening. I'm here to advocate for keeping the cat bus as no alternative is in sight yet. I'm here to speak for the businesses, disabled, elderly, locals, students and tourists to ask that we don't have a gap in public transport if the council cut the cat. Plans are needed for the community members who are reliant on public transport for their everyday amenities. Tourists can't walk to all our marketed destinations. Locals would rather hop on a cat than use their cars and pay parking. The South Beach businesses don't want to be cut off. Public transport should not be removed from our city's budget. Our population will increase and our tourism will grow, so will our cars. Cutting public transport is looking backwards, not forwards. Council stated prospective cat bus funding bodies would be approached last year in March 2022. South of South Street is devoid of buses to South Fremantle, as the 532 is once per hour off-peak weekends and public holidays and comes from Coburn. Recent local reports are stating 2-hour waits between 532 buses. This will not cover our community and tourist needs. If the cat is cut, we will lose any service until an alternative is put in place. This could take months or years. Surely we can negotiate with the Port, the PTA, Notre Dame, our local member and our current and or future Ministers for Transport and Tourism. We were told at Politics in the Pub meeting if we meet another equal 1/3 partner besides the Council and the PTA, we would be set, we could keep the cat. The Keep the Cat group had a meeting with Simone McGurk's office last week and they said they hadn't heard about cat bus funding needs until it came up in Council recently. No one has approached them for funding. The Keep the Cat group will also be attending the first CEO reference group this Thursday. Even now, 2 weeks into a 3-month funding reprieve from the Fremantle City Council, there's a very real chance that all our cat services will be gone by the end of September. Will the 3 months be enough time to do the job? A solution needs to be found prior to the October local elections as the council goes into caretaker mode. As both the Fremantle Council and the state government are currently saying it is the other group's problem, our community needs bus coverage. A positive resolution will come if the funding groups talk and hopefully a new funding model is decided. Why can't we keep the blue and red cat buses, the preferred option, running past September this year until permanent alternative bus coverage is up and running to cover the community's needs? Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Mark, did you want to speak as a seconder? All right, do we have any other speakers on this item? Okay, John Dowson.
I like blue cats and red cats, and I just had 2 comments to make. This is a question of money. It's a lack of money that means there's a cut. And my 2 suggestions would be, one, that you think back to the cash and lieu policy that council used to use, and a lot of councils still use. When Bruce Campbell and I were on council in 1996, we got the cash and lieu policy changed so that the money could be used for transport options such as the cat bus. Now, if you were charging developers a small little fee, well, a reasonable fee, for cash in lieu, which I think should be, millions of dollars would be accrued from the cash in lieu fund, which would help pay for this public transport. So that's my number one comment. Number two is GTL have told me that if they got the lease for the markets, they would pay for the cat bus. So they seem to think that the cat bus is a good idea and would fund it as part of a lease negotiation. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers on the item? Mark Woodcock.
So while I support John's idea for the cash in lieu, I think the most important part is that there's a public record kept. Is that in and out? The public record is kept of where that money was assigned to go and what it was intended for, not that it disappears into a slush fund and it gets spent on all sorts of things, because I'm sure there's a very long list of places where cash seeps into. So if we were going to have that, we really need to have a clear, transparent system of that fund, how it was intended to be used, and every year a proper accounting system of where it was actually spent.
Okay. Do we have any other speakers on Gina's motion? Okay. Gina, did you wish to close it all?
I would just like a plan to be put in place to cover those in the community that really need the help, and not a big gap left, leaving people without public transport, especially the disabled and the elderly. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll put this one to a vote. So raise your hands, all those in favour. Thanks, and against. And so that's carried. So that brings us to the end of business for the night. No, I think questions would have been the appropriate time for that. So I didn't have your name written down for it. All right. Well, I will give leave to you to ask a late question, perhaps. Okay.
Thank you very much. My point was that we've heard the officers tonight mention amounts of money, so how much was spent on the golf course, how much was spent on, say, Port Beach restoration. I'd just like in future to always see where it's clear that you can see where the money came from, how much came from council, how much came from the Lottery West, how much came from the state government, etc., etc. So we get a real idea, because it sounds great when we spent X number of $1 million on a project, but where did the money actually come from? I think that's really important. And on the golf part, will the golf course return to its status of where it was in the state league, say back in 2018? Is that right? Is it still being used? It'd be interesting to see if those projects, when they're built, are they the same quality that they were before they were adjusted?
All right. Thanks. We'll take those ones as on notice. As I think one will be addressed through reports through to council, and the other one is we can point out where that is captured in the annual reporting. All right, so I am going to declare the meeting closed at 7:19 p.m. Thank you very much for attending tonight.